All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this second episode of a Slice of BI. And this week we're joined by Juliana, the Power BI accessibility aficionado. So thank you for joining us today, Juliana.
Thank you very much for having me today.
For those new to the podcast, this is only our second episode, but I'm Nick. My role is head of data and AI for a UK-based Microsoft consultancy. Dave, introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm David Johnston, and I'm a Power BI developer for UK consultancy as well, but not the same one as Nick. So,
unfortunately, no,
yeah.
That would be nice. And Juliana, do you want to introduce yourself? I'm sure people who are watching already know who you are, but you might as well do it anyway.
Yeah, I'm Juliana, and I work as a reporting lead at Costain in the UK as well. And I've been working with Power BI for the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years. But I started my career, I'm not going to say when, but a long time ago in data science and ocean research.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I think we probably all started our careers before Power BI was even released. Would that be accurate?
Say again.
I would say we probably all started our careers long before Power BI was even released.
Yeah. Way before that.
Yeah.
I started coding with Fortran 77, so it's been a while.
Yeah, let's not put any dates on these things, Nick. Let's just life started when Power BI came along. So.
Yeah. Okay. That's how we judge how old we are when Power BI came out. Okay. Cool. All right.
I'm 6 years old.
All right. Well, again, thanks for joining the podcast today, Juliana. So, for those watching, we're going to speaking to Juliana about all things accessibility in Power BI. So, we'll just be having a bit of a conversation about that. So, I'll just get started. So, what was the thing that initially sparked your interest in accessibility for Power BI?
So it was an incident that I had. So I had a really simple Excel dashboard. It was a stacked column chart with RAG color, so red, amber, and green. And it was counting out of the suppliers how many were each one of the statuses. And it was very simple, very easy to understand. And for 6 months, I had the main user of that dashboard. He kept messaging me, "Oh, Juliana, can you explain me what's going on?" It was for 6 months, and I remember I was really busy, and I was just like, "Right, what is wrong? Do you know what the file is?" Yeah. Can you open the file? Yes, I can. What don't you understand? It's just a column chart. Oh, no, I'm colorblind. I can't see the difference of the colors.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible because I think he was trying to give me a hard time, all things you can possibly think that someone doesn't like you. And I felt so ashamed. It was, I don't know, I think it was one of the worst days in my career, like professionally, because everything that I pretty much a bit of biased was that person, and it was nothing that I thought it was. So I was really shocked, and I went straight away to try to figure out what can I do. And it was really overwhelming because it started saying about the different types of color blindness, and then found somewhere saying, "Oh, add different textures," and I was like, "I can't do that in Excel." And I gave up. I froze. I was like, "I can't do it." And then I moved to a new job, and it was a full-time secondment when a really busy program, and I didn't have time. So I just like kind of brush it to a side. I was like, I don't want to think about it. And then I joined another company, another project, and I had a bit of a downtime, and I started looking into it, right? Okay, what is about colorblindness? What can I do? And it was also the time that I started engaging more with LinkedIn and following more users. People were more, had more experience in design. And that's when I realized I could do something about it, and it was not too difficult. And I started learning and understanding. And then I heard about WCAG, the guidelines on digital accessibility. And I had a colleague that really supported my learning. She helped me understanding. And I pretty much just dedicated. I have to teach myself, read, that paid for a course to better understand. And then I was trying, it's like, how can I translate that? Right? So I did some training in user interface design, and I was trying to combine both. And I realized that, well, if you know the best practices in user interface design, you will naturally design more accessible digital interfaces. It doesn't need to be a Power BI report. It can be just
Mm,
a PowerPoint slide. So that's kind of why it happened, and why I decided, how I got to where I am now. And it kind of made my mission that I want to make more people aware about it, because often people who struggle to see for whatever reason, they are likely not going to put their hands up and say, oh, sorry, no, I am colorblind, can you make it different?
yeah.
And yes, it was a bit of a trauma for me, and I decided to do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even though Power BI has been around a while now, what is it? Well, 10-year anniversary this year, wasn't it, for Power BI? So it's been around a while now. I if you follow me on LinkedIn, I bang on about this all the time, about following UI and UX best practices for Power BI, because we're developing digital products, right? It's no different to an interface you might use in your energy app or something like that, right? You go to your energy app and it's got charts on it. You go to your banking app, it's probably got charts and stuff on it, and they're going to conform to UI and UX best practices. And it's still one of those very overlooked things within Power BI. And I would say, even myself, I'm still guilty of not thinking about accessibility within my reports. Like, we were just having a chat before we started the stream, and I was saying about how I shared something, and Gene, whose surname I can't remember, but if people know SQL Gene, then I know who I'm talking about, said, oh, that looks good, but you've got some accessibility issues. So even I'm guilty of overlooking it, probably more often than not. No, it's not something I think about often when I'm developing Power BI reports. So to the audience that are watching, and also to me, what's maybe some advice you would give to ensure that we are thinking about accessibility when we're developing, like, you know, in your job, when you're developing reports, is there like I don't know, like an accessibility checklist that you use, or do you know, is there people that you may consult with to say, that are, have accessibility issues, you might talk to them about it? Kind of what brings it to the forefront of your mind when you're developing?
So before I even open Power BI, I have a few things that I go through, of course, after you understand what are the requirements. And I don't have a checklist, but I know the Elena Drakulevska, she posts on her Moonstory blog a really good checklist. So if anyone's looking for a good checklist, definitely have a look. But I start everything on the easiest side, which is color, right? We usually have a color palette. If you don't have a color palette, you have to start from zero. Then it's sometimes easier because I can select colors that I know that would be it would be an accessible combination. But thinking about what colors you're going to use together and what kind of background. So rule of thumb is, if you have a light background, use dark colors for text and your data colors. And if you're using a dark background, which I have some reservations with dark background, use light colors for text and data color. So don't try to, sometimes it looks quite sleek, right? I'm going to have a dark background and a navy blue text to make everything blending. It's not great. So think, if you're squinting your eyes, just to understand, your users will squint their eyes as well. So be very careful. Just think about it. It's not for you. So that's the main thing that we have to consider when we are designing any digital document. We are not designing for ourselves. It may look cool for us, but think about how my audience will see that interface. So that is pretty much what I check. If you follow the WCAG guidelines, they have the core principles: that is perceivable, operable, PO, understandable, and robust. And then if you think for each one of them, it will understand. So perceivable means that your users should be able to understand the interface, operate it with the senses available for them. So that means that if, in a very simple way, if you have a video people who may not hear very well, they may use the captions, and they will still make full use of the content because they have an alternative way to understand what's going on. And that's why you have to think in terms of Power BI as well. And then you have also color contrast, right? Typography. So all the design elements that, as you said, Nick, very wisely, all the whatever best practices we have, they naturally draw into the accessibility side. So just think about people be able to see if it is a dark environment, if the screen resolution is not very good, or if perhaps they have, I don't know, color vision impairment. So think about those questions. So we start with background choice, color choice, font size is really important. You're very tempted to use size 8 for data labels or for axes. Who has not? I've done it. I am guilty. And it's really difficult. We should ideally stick to minimum size of 12, depends on your canvas size. But I've been for a really interesting experience. So I have to build prototypes in Figma for my UI design certification. And I have to design for mobile phone, right? And it was impossible to choose a font size above 12 points. I couldn't. So the feedback I had was, think about accessibility. Do not use font below 12. And I knew it. So it is very difficult for when you're designing to think about how much content I can put into the screen. And then you think, oh, perhaps if I have more empty space in my screen, I can also make elements a bit bigger. So I can have my axes, label, everything's going to can have more space for it. So yes, it's just don't overwhelm, don't put everything, because if you have more space, you will be able to tell a better story. You'll be able to make better use of typography. And I think there is something that's really important in Power BI, which is tab order. So if you ever try to navigate a report just using the tab key, you can see the screen, right? So you just keep clicking tab until you go to where you want to go. But if you cannot see what's on your screen, right, you may miss it. And if you make the effort of putting alternative text, and perhaps the second element is page navigation, click to go to the next page. If the person cannot see that there are other elements, they will click to go to the next page and they will miss the information. So how can you make your user navigate in an intuitive way and not miss important information? That are really cool designs. They're very really sleek. I've seen some tutorials. Oh, that looks awesome. They're usually not accessible. So, there are some workarounds that we can, I'm going to use a native version. I've been there, I've done that. They usually are not accessible because you make so many workarounds to create a specific design that you move away from accessibility. So think simple, make things simple. Don't try to be fancy, because that's the other side. Because of my background, I've done a lot of statistics. And I remember the first time I used the term standard deviation to a stakeholder. And he looked at me and said, what is a standard deviation? It was a big shock for me. And then I realized I can't talk about standard deviation. I have to understand who I'm talking to. And if you have a nice, beautiful visual in your dashboard that has got standard deviation or other statistical elements that people don't understand, this is also about designing for everybody, regardless of circumstances and also technical knowledge. So that's also considered. I think it's also incorporated within accessibility, designing for everybody, regardless of technical abilities. But that's not falling WCAG, right? I think it's beyond WCAG. It's beyond accessibility guidelines. It is more the user experience side as well.
Yeah.
So yes, think simple. Space, contrast. So that is a very good, very easy to start with, even before you go, even if you don't think, I'm not going to put alternative text, but I'm going to start with contrast. You get used because it's going to be natural. You're going to see some point that you're not going to do the checklist because it's going to be part of your routine. I need to check the color contrast, how much space I have on my screen. Is it easy to understand? You like alignment, right? Am I going all over the place to understand what's happening? Does it have a flow that tells the story? So think about all of that, and again, user interface, best practice, and user experience, they do help you, even if you don't know what WCAG, what it says.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% guilty of building things that are not accessible, like doing workarounds and hacks to make cool things, right? And I only realized the tab order thing about 6-8 months ago, and then I realized that a lot of these visuals that I've created, because they are made up of multiple elements and multiple visuals that is layered on top of each other, like tabbing through that would make zero sense, because it's stuff that's layered on top of other stuff, and it wouldn't make any sense if you were to tab through it. So I think one of the key things you said there was you're not designing for yourself, you're designing for others. And I think that's something we often forget as Power BI developers. When we build in it, we think, oh, I think that looks good, I think that works, but actually your end users may not. Like your point about font sizes, yeah, I use font size 8 quite a lot because I have. It might be because I have like 4K screens, right? So that font size looks fine on my screen, but maybe on other screens it's going to look bad. But also, of course, it's a very small font and people may not be able to read it, etc. And then the contrast as well. Like a big eye opener for me recently was when I was looking at into contrast. Was like, like your like subtext, right? You may put it in a light-ish or mid-gray, but actually against a white background, it's not accessible. I can see it, I can read it fine, but actually others are not going to be able to read it fine, because it's not
and it may well look aesthetically pleasing. Oh, it makes sense to do it, but we have to try. I'm not saying I'm perfect. Julian, no, sometimes I catch myself using the wrong colors because I think it looks nice. So I have to look twice. But it's not only about cosmetic. It's not only about looking good. It has to be usable. And sometimes we have to compromise a little bit on what we think is sleek and stylish, right? It's just like I wanted to look really stylish. I wore like high heels on the beach. And I was like, oh, what a stupid choice. Why did I do it? Right? So I compromised my comfort because I wanted to be cool wearing high heels. I was on the sand. So it's the same thing with the dashboard. Oh, it looks so cool, but maybe someone's going to have a lot of trouble to understand it. And sometimes it's not about even having, for example, sight impairment. It's because your screen resolution is not great. So you're going to have issues with that. Or the light conditions is not the right one. And you're still going to struggle with that. So things that I think, even I have 2 screens, right? Somehow they have different brightness level. In one screen, it's considerably brighter than the other one. So I'm doing something and I put on the other one. Oh, that's looks horrible. So I always press 2 screens. And that happens. We have to consider that people have different settings in their screens. And perhaps if you think that in one screen, 2 shades of color, they look okay. If you put it another brightness settings, they're going to look the same, right? So even we have to consider that. And that is going to be your user. Your stakeholders, and they may look and say, I'm not going to use it because I can't see the difference, the colors. What does it mean? You're going to have really vocal people say, sorry, change it, this is rubbish. And you're going to have people, they will just shut down and stop using it.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So on the point of colors, so somebody has asked in the chat about colors. If I show the question here, you should be able to see that question there. So what are the best practices for choosing color palettes to ensure reports are friendly for colorblind users?
So the most common type of color blindness is red and green color blindness, which means that users have difficulty. So people who have that kind of color blindness, they will have difficulty differentiating those 2 colors. There are different levels. So you may have red color blindness, you may have complete red color blindness, or just partial. You may see some red. So there are some color combinations that are complicated, like green and red. And unfortunately, we love green and red for statuses, right? So if you try to move away from that, there is a really cool tool at Adobe. There is a color blindness simulator that allows you to enter, I think in total 5 different colors. So you can add a hex code, and it simulates in 3 different types of color blindness, which is the total color blindness for blue, red, and green. And then allows you to tweak the colors. There are different color models you can choose, so you can adjust the colors. And then you were going to see on the simulation, okay, there is no more conflict. And then you can, and I still use that like every time if I'm not sure about I don't want to check the contrast, right? Because one thing is checking the color contrast between foreground and background. And the other thing is, okay, I have column chart, very simple, which colors work together without causing accessibility issues. And of course, ideally, we should try not to use only colors to differentiate, different series, for example. There are alternative ways. So if you have a line chart, you can use different markers. You can use different line styles. So you can have solid line, dash line, dotted line. So regardless of the color, they will have a secondary way to identify what's different. And you can add the series name as well to the chart, and use good color contrast. So in theory, if you have the right color contrast, so for graphic elements, would aim for 3:1 color contrast. In theory, if the colors you select, they have that contrast ratio, they will not cause accessibility issues for who has got color blindness. I always check though, because it's very difficult to get 3 or 4 different colors that have between themselves a color contrast ratio of 3:1.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult. I tried, I spent days and I couldn't find. So definitely make use of the Adobe Color Blindness Simulator. It's free and it's very used to, it's going to tell you there is conflict and you don't even need to think twice. Okay, I'm going to just adjust, and you can do the tweaks that are necessary.
So is that a website, is it?
Yes. So it's the Adobe Color Blindness Simulator.
Careful when you type adult into your web browser.
Say that again, Sorry.
Careful when typing adult into your web browser.
Oh yeah, especially in the UK at the moment. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay, that's good. I don't want to hog the mic. So, David, you got a question?
Well, no, I just thought. I mean, there's some great points made. I think the idea of that you've got. I think as Power BI designers or report designers, we can often sometimes fall into the thing of I've learned a cool technique or how to make something look striking. So it's easy sometimes, like you say, you've got to design for your user, not design for ourselves and stuff. So I think
did you like? It just made me think. I don't know if you agree, David, but is it almost like it feels like Power BI limits our ability to make things accessible though by its own design?
Very easily.
Yeah, like because of not just the accessibility limitations, but just design limitations in Power BI is part of the reason we do these workarounds and these hacks and stuff to try and get that nice UI and UX. But actually, we're breaking accessibility at the same time by doing that.
Yeah. So there is the point that you have to consider, okay, if I have serious accessibility needs for my stakeholders, what is the best tool? So, for example, if someone who relies entirely on screen readers, even if we add the best alternative text possible, you're still going to limit how much that person will understand because it's based on what you think is important.
Yeah.
So you're still going to remove the capability of having a holistic understanding. So you have to start and doing a very, very good research on what that person needs. So what do you use the dashboard for? What are the kind of insights you need? And perhaps Power BI is not the best tool to give a better overview of what that person needs. So it's about also, okay, what is the need and what is the right tool? And it has to go before you open Power BI. It has to go when you're understanding your audience, when you're understanding the requirements. And it's important to understand if there is someone who may, I'm talking about more extreme cases, You don't want to hinder that person from having as much information as possible. And if you ask me, how do you do with alternative text? I struggle a lot. I don't think it's easy because of that. Because even if I tell what is the insights that I think that visual has, okay, but so what, right? I'm telling one piece of information, and Power BI brings so many different views of the data. It gives us so many opportunities to slice and dice the data in a way that perhaps we have to consider, okay, how can we translate that information and give the same level of all these, possibilities to someone who may not be able to fully see what's on the screen.
Yeah.
It's also about thinking about that, understand. That's why it's very important to understand and get to know your audience.
Okay. So if you were in a room with the program directors for Power BI, what are some accessibility related features you would tell them need to be implemented, or you'd like to see implemented within Power BI?
So I think there are some accessibility checkers that are quite good on Microsoft. So if you have, for example, PowerPoint or Word, they have some considerably better checks than you have in Power BI. So for example, I have a website. It's WordPress, and I was changing the colors, and straight away I changed the background color, and I haven't changed the text color yet. It flashed. There is no good contrast here, right? So it was straight away there. So I think it's AI. It's a use of AI for that. We were talking a lot about AI. That's something that we could bring AI to. How can we make AIs help us to design more accessible digital interfaces, right?
Yeah.
When they say poor color contrast, or you miss alternative text, because if you do that in PowerPoint, it will tell you it's missing title, it's missing alternative text, color, it tells you. So if you have something similar in Power BI, and a bit. So if you go to big data conferences, right, there is a lot on AI and all this fancy, shiny new technology, and there is not much fuss made about accessibility. So Microsoft should perhaps make look a bit more, interesting as well, because I may sound really boring talking about a girl talking about that again. But if perhaps someone really cool start talking about it, all right, that's also really cool to do it. And then people will start, okay, I'm gonna follow that.
Yeah.
But it's not only about preaching, right? You have to do it. It's not about do what I say. It's about I'm doing it, and that's why you should also try to do it.
Yeah. It's almost like someone needs to develop a third party accessibility checker tool, like you were saying about the AI in WordPress. Someone needs to do something similar that we can have as a third party tool for Power BI, because actually it seems like an obvious thing it should have, really.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about your talk, potentially with Copilot with the voice technology and stuff. So potentially for people who are severely visually impaired, etc., the potential is that they start, asking questions, and then they get the insights read back to them. So it almost takes out the need for, not saying you take out alt text, but it probably allows a bit more insight into the data and what's actually going on, rather than being, because the alt text is static, isn't it?
You can make it dynamic, okay, but there is as much as you can do. I try to create really complex text to be dynamic to like 3 different slices, and it's so difficult. You still need to have some manual input to make it make sense. But I think the Q&A function work really well, but you need to make sure that you configure, so because if people type in a way, okay, Power BI has to understand that also means that if you create the measure in a different way. So try to configure in a way that if you use the Q&A function, it will make more sense. I think that will be something interesting. But even Power BI itself, right? Power BI has got tooltips. Tooltips are not compatible with screen readers.
Why
not? So if you open, there is an option to open the visual in a table format. That table is compatible with screen readers, and if you have tooltip, it will show that. But if you have any other element that has got tooltips, your user will completely miss if they depend on screen reader, so they're not compatible.
So
And there is also a tooltip on the title.
yeah,
That is not, it's going to be completely missed. It's not going to show anywhere.
okay.
So just for the fact that Power BI allows you to do that and completely hidden information from who needs the screen reader, it's already okay.
yeah,
What can we do to change it?
yeah,
And
definitely.
it's not, people don't know about it. So why it's not made clear that you can use it, but what is the alternative way to give the same information to people who are using screen readers?
Yeah. So how if I think about what I do recently on a daily basis, so doing a lot around developing Power BI reports for one of our clients, and as part of when we go in to do this work, we have to give a statement of work, a quote, how much is it going to cost, with a breakdown of all the effort. And of course, clients don't always want to pay, right? Or they don't always want to pay that final amount. So I'll admit that accessibility isn't always in that breakdown. Actually, more often than not, probably 9.9 times out of 10, there is not a piece of work within that statement of work about accessibility. If we were to put it in there, of course, that would increase the quote cost. So
Yeah.
So how would you go about convincing stakeholders, customers, clients that accessibility is important? Because I can see, if I was to talk about it, and I'm not an expert on it by any means, I feel like the pushback would be like, oh, that's kind of a nice to have. Let's not worry about that for now. So how would you deal with that kind of reluctance? Yeah.
So unfortunately, the UK is not in the part of the EU anymore. So the accessibility, the EU now, it's mandatory. Not only government websites, but they be more strict. So the deadline, I think, was end of June. So everything has to be, all the digital interfaces, they have to be accessible. In the UK, it's just the UK government websites. Or so if you're bidding for UK government project, you will have to comply. If you're producing any digital interface, you will have to comply with WCAG regulations. So you have to show you have competence for that. It is really difficult though when you have a client that's not part of the government. Depending also the company that I work for, when they heard what I do, oh, you have to write for us. Everybody's really excited. It would depend a lot on the ethos of the company because they have some priorities. What is the priority of the company? But so it's very difficult to. So if you try to explain why do we need a ramp for wheelchair users, right? Oh, they need because. So you can explain, but you cannot feel what it means.
Yeah.
To have the ramp or not have the ramp. And it's the same thing when we explain digital accessibility for who does not rely on accessibility features. So you can try to simulate, right? Give them quote where, I don't know, if you have to add a chart, put everything in the same color, and they will look, oh, where's this? Oh, that's what happens when you don't consider accessibility. And in the UK, it's still quite a big thing, diversity inclusion. So I don't think will be an issue to start talking about. But I think aside from work, we need to raise awareness. We need to do this work that is our free time, right? I do this work, unpaid work, because I think it's really important that more people start thinking about it and giving the right value to the effort that is required to produce a dashboard that is accessible as well.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of work needed doing on that side. We have to raise awareness, and it's very interesting when you try simulate things, right? So I also simulated how it would be to navigate a report with the wrong tab order. And it's horrific. You just start with a random chart. What is that? What does that mean? Right? Try not to put a title. What is that? You don't put the axis. Don't put, I don't know, if you have a currency, don't put the currency. What are you talking about? So unfortunately, it is a really, it's going to take time to get people to think, okay, that makes sense. And that's because most people in power, they don't rely on that. So perhaps we need to have more people with digital accessibility needs or inaccessibility needs making decisions, because they will know, they will feel it. Even when you ask me, I'm very limited to tell the importance, because I don't rely entirely on that. And I very easily can miss it because I don't need it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, the whole thing about tab order, I think I discovered it about 2 years ago. And I looked at one of my reports and tabbed through it, and I was horrified because it was going down to the bottom right. It's, it was just all over the place. It was just, I nearly had a fit. But in terms of the work that you put in to create an accessibility a report that has all the accessibility features that you have, do you feel that there's a sort of extra time that it takes you than, because obviously you talk about building a workflow that's repeatable, that becomes a habit, but that's, right chart titles, size and colors and stuff. But in terms of the other stuff like alternative text and those other features, how long do you think that adds on to your development?
To be honest, I think it's about a learning curve for the developer. Once you get used to it, it doesn't add much at all. Piece of work that requires more attention from me is alternative text. And that's because you have to understand who is relying on the alternative text. If there is someone who, as I said, depends entirely on the screen reader, that's when you add additional work, because you have to understand what the person covering sites they need to see, and then tailor that to that person as well. Because if you just put something very generic as alternative text, the person is not going to have the full understanding of their report. So I think the alternative text is the most critical and the most difficult for me. I haven't found a way of creating alternative text that is meaningful for everybody, because sometimes I design dashboard that different departments will use, and different departments will say different things, and then what should I prioritize in the alternative text? So that's why you have to start considering, okay, if there is someone who rely entirely on alternative text and screen readers, what can we do additionally to Power BI report? Because perhaps Power BI reports not the best way to give them the access. So you can use Power BI and something else, because with a screen reader you can do can go through the native visuals. It allows you to have a tabular format, which is compatible with screen readers, but you can only see one at the time. So if you want to compare different things, what's happening on the screen, you're not going to have the ability.
So if you found someone, sorry, Julia, carry on.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, go on.
So if you did find someone or several people in the organization who Power BI really wasn't the tool that they could get information from, what would your options be?
It depends. Sometimes a simple Word document is good enough. It would depend on what they need, what kind of insights they need, what kind of information they need to have access. We don't need to do anything too fancy, as long as people can take the information they need. So it would depend a lot. What kind of project is it? Maybe a video, maybe something they prefer audio. Some people learn better. So that you go to the cognitive ability. Some people understand better when they hear, right? Some people for example, when I'm studying, I need to write down everything. Otherwise I don't remember.
Yeah.
And, the same way that we have our own ways of learning, own ways of doing things, people understand in different ways. They have, sometimes we talk a lot about cognitive load. And for us, maybe, oh no, I can get on with it. And I see my son where he gets a book. He's all over the place because there are so many pictures and dialogue balloons over there. And he tries to see every detail of the picture, but he doesn't want to read. And that's the same thing with a dashboard, right? We put like 10 slices. People look at that, they will already have a barrier to interact with your report just because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. Someone asked me, "Oh, I'm hiding the filters. Aren't you adding friction to your design?" And I said, well, if you just think it just because it's an extra click, you are adding friction. But if you think beyond that, if you think in terms of cognitive load, perhaps having give information like installments, right? You don't need to show everything at the same time. So you can first show your report. The person understands on your report, okay, I also have filter options. I'm going to see my filter options before getting overwhelmed and not understanding. I don't want to see these. What does that mean? So even that we have to think about. So even if it's alternative text, we're talking about alternative text, and I kind of wander away, but one thing gets to another. So that's why I'm saying sometimes simple is the best way.
Less is more sometimes. Yeah.
Actually, just before I forget, because I've got such a terrible brain for remembering things. So you interestingly talking about slicers on the page. So from an accessibility standpoint, is there an advantage of having the slicers on the page to using the filter pane?
I don't know the answer for that. I think it also depends the level of, so how much a user know how to use Power BI, right? We have to remember that. We know it's very easy for us. I just go to the filter pane. But what is the level of understanding of the audience? How comfortable are they? Because there are people that I know, they don't want to touch that because they think they're going to break the report. And even if you tell them you're not going to break it, they still don't want to touch it. A good way to do it depends. You can help your users creating bookmarks on their browser, right? If you have in Power BI service, you can create bookmarks for them, and it goes to the page that they need. But there is a piece of education that we cannot forget when we are, so, okay, I created this amazing dashboard, 100% accessible, I'm going to give it to my client. Okay, what do they need to know so they can make the best use possible of the dashboard, right? Do they know about the focus mode? Many people don't know about that. They can just open the visual to take the whole page and you can focus on that. So very small things. So there are these built-in accessibility features in Power BI, and some of them we do not need to configure. But we need to let our users know you have these options as well.
Yeah.
Right? The education involved that. So it's not only about dashboard design, job done, goodbye, see you. It is about helping them to understand. So in terms of it's better to use the filter or slicer, it would depend a lot on who is using. So again, you need to get to know your audience to make the best decision.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to say what to do because there are so many scenarios you can in terms of clients, in terms of users that you need to assess to make the best decision. But that's my only concern of using the filter pane. It's people, or they don't know how to use, or they get really scared of using it.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've heard one of the laws of UX, the paradox of the active user. People don't read manuals, right? So they get a new piece of software, you get that bit of furniture from IKEA, you don't read the manual, you just go straight into it, right?
Yeah.
Same thing when people open a Power BI report. I mean, we build documentation, we build user guides. Majority of people will not read them. They'll hear, oh, you've got access to Power BI report now. They'll go into it and start clicking about. So if you've built your report in a way that people are already understand it, so I can't remember what the other law is, but that one where it's like most people spend most of their time on other apps. So build your app to look and behave the same.
Yeah.
Then people probably won't need a user manual if they recognize a filter button, if they recognize that burger menu button or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's in the top left, top right. That's where we always go, right? So
that's the easiest. It's just like the left-hand side navigation, right? Everybody, if you go to browsers, open website. So if you try to emulate that, it will help a lot. So you're going to reduce the learning curve.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it's going to be repeatable across. If you have 10 pages in your report, put things in the same position. Don't move around. Because people will spend less time trying to figure out how you work, so actually spend time using it and getting the right insights out of it. So again, you get back to UX and user interface design principles that really help you to reduce the cognitive load of your users, so how much effort they need to understand and use your report.
Yeah. Cool. So another question on just going back to AI then. So we were talking about having like some AI that can look at the screen and tell you if there's contrast issues or accessibility issues. But do you envisage a scenario where AI may actually hinder the progress in accessibility?
So I had quite a big blockage with AI because 20 years ago, work with AI, and it wasn't new. Nobody called AI; it was just machine learning back in the day. And I started trying to remove this blockage away. And I think based on what I understand of AI nowadays, the major issue you have is bias, right? So how are we creating the models? What kind of data? What's the quality of the data you were inputting to create these AI systems? So I think there is the ethical side of AI that we have to think thoroughly, right? AI doesn't know what's right and wrong. We have to use the right data. We have to say what's right and wrong. So the same way that AI can help a lot on that, it can also be very biased and actually, put you in a different direction.
Yeah.
I've done some tests. I have asked once Copilot to give me the hex code for 2 colors. That I gave the specific color contrast ratio I wanted. I put on the color contrast checker, and it wasn't right. So even that, for me, I always check. So if you're trying to use AI to help your color contrast, for example, just although the color contrast checker may have some AI, I don't know, but just don't fully believe at the moment what AI is coming, what is the output. And people who are way above me in terms of position, you have even in politics, if you think about what are the safeguarding measures we have around the use of AI and how we can make the best use of it. And that's what we have to think about. And always, be human and try to think, is that right? Does this sound right? Is that ethically okay to do it? And that kind of judgment AI doesn't have.
Yeah, because earlier, David, you were saying about Copilot and how, Copilot, it could, I think it probably already can, but, it can look at the semantic model and tell you what you want to know, right? It doesn't need to generate a chart. It'll just, you ask it a question, be it voice question or typing in the question, it'll tell you the answer. But like you were saying, Juliana, how do we know that there isn't some bias involved in that? Like we've seen recently with, ChatGPT, and where it's been telling people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Because and so how do we know? How can we trust that things like Copilot and in Copilot there is OpenAI, there are the ChatGPT models in there as well, along with a load of other models. How do we know it's not just telling us what we want to hear? Like say I'm a sales manager, right? This may be a silly example, but say I'm a sales manager and I'm using AI to query my data in these models or get it to produce, visuals or whatever. But in the course of my interacting with that AI, it's over time, it's told me numbers I don't like. And I've actually said, oh, damn it, that's a rubbish number for the month. How do I know the AI isn't then going, oh, he doesn't like bad numbers, so I'm going to tell him good numbers from now on?
I think you're going at the realms of politics here. It's almost like, well, I put a quote up the other day when a certain president fired the head of the Bureau of Statistics. Like, if you don't like my numbers, I have others. So, but couple of things. It was Jacob's Law is the one about users spend most of their time on other sites. This means that users prefer your site to work the same way as all the other sites they already know.
Yeah.
So, talking about slightly different with Copilot if you're hitting your semantic model. But one of the things I picked up the other day from Brian Julius is, when you put in your instructions, if you create your own AI agents or whatever in ChatGPT, etc., is put in some text to say, please be critical, do not be agreeable, challenge my thinking. Don't just accept that say it's a DAX measure. Please don't just try and slightly improve my DAX measures. Give me other options that would be more, more performant, etc. So rather than just, so if you put that in your instructions, I think that can help a bit. But like you say, when you're querying a semantic modeler and stuff, and if it's just giving you answers, you've got to trust it.
Yeah.
It's a matter of AI literacy, isn't it? It's just like, depending how you query, you're going to have different answers.
Yeah.
So whenever people ask me, oh, AI is going to replace your job, I say, like, well, I think there is a massive human component that if you just ask someone, like, I don't know, the project manager to query something AI so he doesn't need me, it may go massively wrong, because most of the times they cannot explain me what they want. How are you going to make that right? They don't know what they want. Oh, I want a pie chart. So you cannot use a pie chart for that. So how often do you find people telling you what they want? And it's like, sorry, that's not what you need for the kind of insight you want.
Well, so they're probabilistic machines. So then you can ask the same question, and you can get maybe not two completely different answers, but you might not get the same answer twice. So it's careful. I mean, it's great potential,
and I've
but
done
you've got to be very careful
with DAX and Copilot. Giving certain level of details and how wrong it was because of context, right? DAX has context that can make things really, really messy. And it took me, I remember, 2 hours explaining the context. I was like, oh, damn. If I had done it, look into my Yellow Duck, right? I probably would get there without Copilot, but because I have to explain the context to Copilot. So even when we're using as developers, we need to think, is that right? Nothing wrong. If you ask, do you use Copilot? I do. Of course I do, because it makes my life easier. But you just have to be really careful when you use Copilot or AI or whatever you use. Is it right? Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Because it's just you just need one number to be off. People start shouting.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Excel because it's much better. And then I whenever someone says that, I was like, okay, I'm not going to try to explain how messy things can go with Excel.
I love Excel. Excel is awesome. Just don't attack Excel, please.
I'm not attacking, but it's just when you have a lot of people working in Excel, right? And they start changing things at the same time, and you cannot track the changes, and then things can go really wrong. I remember I have to fix the macros that when I was a navigator, and it was a password control macros, and people were still finding a way to break it. Don't ask me how. You can put a password, people will break it. And that's what whenever someone tells me, we're going to use the XLK, how can we make it in a way that nobody's going to touch it? Oh, no, I'm never going to. You will forget, and you will change it.
Yeah, people always find a way. And I remember back in, I think it was like 2008, and I was given a password protected Excel. Going off topic here a little bit, but I was given this password protected Excel, and the person with the password wasn't in, and I just found, it might have been on early days Stack Overflow, I found this piece of code that you can run that generates a hex number that will just open a password protected Excel for you. Probably doesn't work now, probably wouldn't work now, but back then it did. So people always find a way. But that's one of the that trusting the AI was something we spoke about in the last episode, David, where I said about how I was working on a report and I needed some semi-complex DAX code. So I went to ChatGPT and asked it to help me. I took the code, pasted it in, and it returned a number, right? It worked, but actually that number was wrong. But if you don't have that background experience and knowledge of DAX already, or you don't fully understand the business context you're working in or the numbers, and you're just going to be like, oh yeah, that worked, cool. But then you publish it, you send it off to the CFO, and he's like, oh sweet, we're performing 20% above revenue target, brilliant. But actually, it was 20% below target. Yeah. So
there's that great quote. There's that great quote that's something about. It's not numbers that are wildly wrong that get you fired. It's the numbers that are slightly wrong that get you fired. So, like you say, you get a number returned, and you're going, that's so far. There's no way it's that number. But if you get a number that's very close to what you think your number should be,
Yeah.
And that's when you're going to really, if you don't check it or you don't have the understanding, that's going to get you into a lot of trouble because it
Yeah.
looks correct. So
And
Yeah.
it's easily done. I remember once I had a sample of data to test my measures, and it was, oh yeah, it's bang on, it makes sense. As more data start coming through, more different scenarios start occurring, and then and I look, that is wrong, and it got me to have quite a few more entries to realize that the data is wrong. So when you do a quality check on your report, as more data come through, I think it's important to keep checking, because that case was because people doing data entry, right? So whenever you have people manually entering data, you have to think it's another nuance of how many different errors it can cause in your report, and how you can identify those errors and fix them. What is the level of, you're going to increase the level of complexity. So it happened to me, like, it's amazing, I check, it's working. 2 months down the line, Juliana, the numbers don't make sense. It's like, it's completely wrong. Right? It was because I had quite a few variables. I'm going to test just the first variable. It doesn't make sense. And I realized, because there were other conditions, because of the level of complexity of the data I was working with, that I didn't consider, because I had a really small and simple test sample data. And that's we have to consider. And then if we do that, imagine AI, right? If you don't calibrate it right, it's not gonna give you anything good. So rubbish in, rubbish out.
Yeah.
There's a great, I think I mentioned it last time, Nick. A great newsletter that I get. It's called Data's Plural, and there was a data set and a link to court cases that someone's been tracking in the US where people have used AI and it's gotten into trouble or gone wrong and stuff. So some lists. So it's about 230 that he was tracking so far. So I'll maybe drop that in the link sometime and we can have a look at it. So
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left. So I've got one more question, unless David, you've got any additional questions. So I was going to ask, if you could go back to your early career self, what would one piece of advice you would give to yourself?
Coding is important, but understanding people is more important than coding. So spend less time with, getting angry at yourself because your code doesn't look fancy, and spend more time speaking to people and understand.
Yeah, I think that that's good advice for a lot of people. And I'd add to that, because I think when people are kind of getting into this area or into tech, particularly around coding, it's like, oh, I need to know, I need to know it all. I need to know SQL, Python, Java, blah blah blah. I need to know all of it. Actually, I'm very, very good at SQL. My Python sucks, right? And I don't know any other language, but I've done all right, right? So if you get really good at one and maybe have another one in your back pocket, you're fine. But I think people try to, like, they think they need to know everything, and it just becomes overwhelming then, and you'll learn nothing. Yeah.
When you miss the people skills, right? You need to be able to speak to people in first place to be a good developer. So if you don't have good communication skills,
Yeah.
you may be the best code. You may know all the languages, you're not going to be a good professional, because if you can't, unless you have a job there, there are some jobs that you don't need. You don't just lock yourself in the room and you don't need interactions. But if you want to build reports and you work with business intelligence tools, you need to speak to people. And that is for me, it is scary. You have people with different personalities, people who have different, I don't know, experiences and biases. I have my own biases, and depending on who I'm talking to, I try to remove anything that you may have against, put it aside and start from. And it's really difficult to do that, and we have to watch out for that, and learn how to communicate. And that, for me, is more difficult than learning DAX or learning coding, because you get a book, right? You can start testing, you can get sample data set and run your tests, do everything. To talk to people, there are so many different personalities, so many different people you're going to have to liaise with. You can't learn that from a book. I mean, it can help you, give you some hints, but you need to practice, and you have to understand that it's a very important skill as well.
Yeah. Good. David, do you have any final questions?
Probably quite a few, but we want to finish before 9 o'clock tonight. So, well, just a point on talking about communication, etc. They call it soft skills, but they're actually pretty hard. So it makes it sound like it's quite easy, but it's not actually. So, and I think it's the whole thing with Power BI to an extent. I think it's changed in the last few years. Is that there's so much about us, SQL, Power Query, putting the data together, but until recently, probably we've not been taught how to design well, because people have progressed from SQL or Excel to building Power BI reports without having that background of knowledge that Juliana talks about in terms of design features, etc., the laws of UX and stuff and all that. Something that's probably the last 2-3 years there's been a big sort of movement to people realizing they need to design for others and how the skills around that. So I was just going to ask Juliana, you've been I know you're a director of, is it Northeast Women in STEM, is it?
Yeah, so I'm on the board of director of Northwest Women in STEM. Is a community interest group in the northwest of England to support women working in STEM. Yeah.
Just wondering, I mean, how do you see the sort of tech industry that, do you still think there is a big bias or the split? How do you sort of see the split? I know it might be anecdotal because I think I did check. There's not a huge amount of data around it, I don't think, but.
So I think because the split is already not very even, right? Yeah. Majority is men still. And the way that we learn the industry. So for the past year, I've been considering to quit data. So I don't want to do this anymore. And I'm going to you start reading job descriptions. It's like, I don't want to do that. That's not me. So from how we put the job descriptions out there, the language we use, we don't realize that, but from that moment you are already being biased towards men. You making that job more attractive to men. And mansplaining is a real thing. I've been called a kid before. I'm just like, thank you, but I know I'm not as young as I look. But there is a lot still of discrimination. There is still a lot of people patronizing women because there is this legend that we are not good coders, we're not good technical, we are more, oh no, you're a bit more caring than actually coding. So there is a lot of issues there. There are a lot of women quitting tech industry because it's really difficult. So you have these situations of, Glasscliff, that's typical. When you have a crisis, you push a woman into the leadership role and it's already failed, right? So there is a lot that happen, and it makes you consider, do I want to be on this industry? Do I want to keep putting all these effort and having all these barriers, everything against me? So I think we need to recognize a little bit more that there are still issues that need to be addressed. So if we do recognize that, it's easier to act on. And there are behaviors that sometimes we don't even notice that we're doing. I'm not talking about, oh yeah, don't say guys, I don't mind, right? I worked at oil and gas. If someone called me guy, oh yeah, whatever. I don't mind about that. But there are other behaviors that can be might put you off more than be called a guy or guys. So just, I think we need to open our minds a little bit more for what we think it's a good professional look like, right? And we go to schools and you can see that it's already been built in that really young child, what they think a person who works with computers look like. It's already there. I learned at school, right? A geek guy, he's going to be a geek guy. He doesn't know how to deal with people. He's going to, be in the basement. It was just with the computer. That's sort of the image that I grew up with, that people who work with computer. And it's still there. So let's just be a bit more mindful about that.
No, thanks for being so honest on that. I mean, I think even myself, well, not even myself, like I'm making it some sort of deity. I'm definitely not. But I've noticed now certain certain things that I say are phrases that you almost don't think about, and then I've become more aware of, like the whole thing. Oh, hey guys, it's like, oh, Now I know that's used as quite a colloquial thing, and some people don't. But then so I try and consciously say, hey folks, something something that covers all boundaries and stuff. But I'm conscious myself that sometimes you've got to be
It's
careful.
difficult. Sometimes I say guys, right?
Yeah.
I say that because so English is, thinking English is not my first language. So you just learn and you just say, even think without thinking. And there are a few things that I have difficulties understanding because the way that I learned, it doesn't make sense. But we also have to consider the language is something that it plays a significant role in people's
has
lives. So
power.
you have,
Yeah.
especially in the UK, such an international country.
Yeah.
Most of the people that I worked with in the past, they have English as the second language. So we have to be mindful of that. So it's just a completely different. If we spend another hour here just talking about the issues that we can have around language barriers, but yes, we have to be mindful. It's not only about women and men. It's about being fair to everybody and treating people in a fair way. And we all have bias. We just have to stop and think, what are my biases? How can I try to put it away?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's interesting you said about there's women are kind of quitting the industry, because I remember, but I think it was just after COVID, the organization I was working for were having a massive push to get more women into like tech consulting roles within that organization, and they did bring a lot of people on. So I mean, again, I don't know if it's anecdotal or there's numbers around it, but I don't know, maybe that push didn't work as expected. Though, again, anecdotally, I was hiring for a senior AI consultant recently, and the two people in the final round were women, and we've offered to one of them. So yeah, I'm surprised that is happening. It's a shame.
I'm going to give a very clear example. It's a bit drastic, right? When I worked in oil and gas, before I got hired, I'm from Brazil, so it's back in Brazil. All the oil and gas companies were trying to hire more women. They have specific programs to hire women, right? And they will hire a few women. So I remember I joined a company. It wasn't a specific program, but I was hired. There were not many women who were senior. There were only two. So I was a navigator. There were only two women navigators that had more than 5 years experience. My first challenge was getting on board and getting gloves my size, right? I had small hands. My glove size was size 7. The smallest size they had was size 10. Shoes, they didn't have my size. And I was just like, how do you want to have women? You want to hire women, you want to make them stay, and you don't change. You don't have PPE, right? You don't change the culture. It's not about attracting, it's maintaining them. So this is a drastic example, right? We don't need PPE to work with data, but just how when you start talking, oh, let's try to hire women, and then you also have to make the effort. How can we maintain them, right? And if there is a gap, how can we give them the opportunity to bridge that gap? How can we, not about I'm going to promote her just because she's a woman. I don't think that's the right thing. But you can have programs, right? So if you want to get more women to tech, go to schools, do work at schools. Start changing, not only for girls, but the boys. They need to see girls as, oh, they can do that as well. So it's a work you have to do. So it's for generations that we have to keep doing this work. And also actively you have to do something to keep people. It's not only about hiring, it's what are you doing to keep people? Are you having, I don't know, maybe training course with people to change mentality or understanding? There's something that's quite interesting, the reverse mentoring. You can do that, and people really taking it seriously. So it's not only about trying to hire, it's how much effort are you putting to maintain them.
I think I read Invisible Woman, which is kind of, it's quite a stark eye opener for me. So just shows you. I mean, interestingly enough, what you're talking about the PPE and stuff. I worked with a company that had PB, and they came across the same challenges, and it was, like say they had to work hard to find a supplier that would do the smaller clothing, and then there's also PPE for women who are expecting, etc. and stuff. And there's all these different things that they've really done, moved on with and stuff. It was just sort of.
But then there is also, we don't have the budget. I was all right. So fine, what is the company doing about it, right? The department doesn't have budget, so it is a much higher, high above. It's not something that we are on the ground, boots on the ground only. So you can see from that moment that the culture of the company has not actually changed.
No.
So what are they effectively doing? It's not only about, I'm going to post, we have, Women's Day, let's do a celebration for Women's Day, and then you forget about that the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Some consistency and actually doing something about it. And I think, as I said, the best place to start is at schools.
Yeah.
Learn behavior.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there then. But thanks, Juliana, for joining this episode of Slice of BI. It's been really interesting chatting to you. Thank you very much. And for those that are watching, keep an eye out for the next episodes, which we'll be publicizing very soon. Thank you very much. Okay. Goodbye.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Take care.